Welcome back to the DSR channel, and I want to return to the Rogue series now that I've been doing, that I was working on before the UA came out last week. And I've got 9 more Rogue tactics for this video. Number 1, the reliable talent feature that you get at level 7 plus the manifold tool, which is only a common level magic item. Anybody can get the manifold tool and benefit from it, right? You can use your magic action to change which tool it is, and that also gives you proficiency with that tool. So it's a tricky way to just have proficiency with any tool you want or need. So you don't really have to worry about if you're going to do a lot of magic item crafting. Those all require tools, tool proficiency. You can just get this, attune to it, and use it to craft anything, right? And since it's downtime, it doesn't really matter what you have, what other things you have ready with your or attuned to you. And you can swap this in and swap that out before swap it in when you start your downtime, swap it out when you finish your downtime. Okay, so anybody can do that, but note that the Rogue's reliable talent doesn't just work with your skill proficiencies, it works with your tool proficiencies as well, which means the Rogue benefits from this more than anyone else. And you might be wondering, like, well, what kind of ability checks are you making with tools? There's a lot. Let's go to Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Here we are in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. You can see that there is a whole section here under Chapter 2 on tool proficiencies. We're going to go there, bring that up, and it talks a lot about this. This is that rule that I've mentioned a number of times that is reprinted in the 2024 Player's Handbook, where it says if the use of a tool and the use of a skill both apply to a check, a character is proficient with the tool and the skill, consider allowing the character to make the check with advantage. It's no longer phrased as consider allowing it. It's now just part of the base rules in the 2024 Player's Handbook. But this was an optional rule ever since Xanathar's Guide to Everything came out in 2017. That's not why we're here, though. So this goes through every single tool proficiency in the game and talks about what you can do with it, including which skill proficiencies it applies to. Okay, alchemist supplies, it applies to certain arcana investigation checks. Also, here's an interesting tidbit. As part of a long rest, you can use alchemist supplies to make 1 dose of acid, alchemist fire, antitoxin, oil, or perfume, or soap. That's concurrent with your long rest. You don't need additional downtime to create those. Brewer supplies can apply to certain history, medicine, persuasion checks. Calligrapher supplies can apply to arcana and history checks, certain kinds, right? These are subsets of those checks, and it describes what the subset is. Carpenter's tools can apply to history, investigation, perception, and stealth. Again, certain subsets of those checks. So don't sleep on these, and it goes through every single tool proficiency in the game, talking about which kinds of skill proficiencies these tool proficiency checks can apply to. All right, so there's a lot of opportunity, and the Rogue can just switch on any one of these at any time they're needed with that manifold tool. So they're probably the one that gets by far the most benefit out of it and might use it during adventures more than anyone else, because there are a lot of checks where at least one tool is going to apply to it. So if you can just give yourself proficiency with that tool, you now have given yourself advantage on that check. And thanks to reliable talent, you can now only roll 10 or higher on the die roll. So you've set your minimum to 10 plus whatever your modifier is. All right, so let's say that the DM calls for you're navigating across overland, a long distance, right? And the DM says, all right, everybody make a survival check, and the navigator's tools apply. And you're proficient with neither of those, okay? So your wisdom score is maybe a 12, right? So you're going to roll a d20 plus 1. You're going to have a pretty poor chance of succeeding at that check. Well, you can just use manifold tools, switch whatever the manifold tool was into a navigator's tools. You're now proficient with navigator's tools, which is going to let you make that roll with proficiency now. So it would be whatever level you are, right? Your wisdom is 12, so plus 1, let's say you're level 5. So you're going to get a plus 3 from your proficiency bonus, which means you're now rolling it with a plus 4 modifier, which is better. But also your minimum roll is now 10. So the minimum you can make on that check is now 14 for that navigation check, where you would have had a roll of just simply plus 1 with an equal distribution from 1 to 20 on the d20. So your chances of rolling 14 or higher were 40%. And now your minimum roll is 14. All right, very cool. Number 2, all right, mounts plus steady aim. So this is one I think a lot of people figured out a long time ago, but I think newer people or people who just haven't played the Rogue a lot maybe don't know this one. So this is a good one to know, right? Steady aim sets your movement to 0, and you can't move before it, but it's only you, right? But if you're on a mount, its movement does not count as your movement, so you can steady aim. The mount can still move unrestricted, and that doesn't cause any problems with steady aim. Wonderful, right? And also, so the mount can run you in, you can steady aim, make an attack, and they intermix their turn with yours, right? So you don't have to they don't have to complete their turn and then you take your turn or vice versa. You intermix because it's a controlled mount. You intermix your turn with theirs. So you can steady aim, then they run you in, then you make an attack on somebody with advantage, and you have an ally within range. I mean, you have advantage plus an ally in range, so you kind of double qualify for your sneak attack. Make your attack, hopefully hit, and then the mount can just disengage and move away. And it never provokes an opportunity attack. You never provoke an opportunity attack. You got sneak attack. It's all great. The only downside to this strategy is that mounts often don't fit in certain places. So you're going to have problems with that. And mounts can only, according to the rules as written, squeeze into a space that's one size smaller than them. So a horse can squeeze through a 5-foot hallway. It counts as difficult terrain for them. So it's not the worst, but if you go any bigger, you're going to have problems, right? Elephants are huge. And if it's a 5-foot hallway, an elephant cannot pass through a 5-foot hallway. Tip number 3, or tactic number 3. So this one, the core of it is Sentinel plus trip, right? In the first Rogue Tactics video, I talked about how the trip cunning strike option wasn't very good. And somebody pointed out, well, if you do it as a reaction, which means that some creature attacked you, let's say you have Sentinel, and then you also have Sentinel, then that means you can trip them. And if you have Sentinel, because it's an opportunity attack that you provoked, or they provoked for you to make this attack, that means Sentinel's halt engages, so their movement is reduced to 0. You've tripped them; they're now prone. They can't stand up because if you have no movement left, you cannot stand up. So they're stuck for the rest of their turn on the ground. Which also means if they can't stand up during their turn, they can't stand up at all. So they're stuck on the ground, right? So that's actually a pretty good use of trip. And then you can just also apply withdraw. So you could withdraw as well and just move away, get movement speed during their turn, right? As your reaction, because cunning strike, you did a cunning strike during their turn. So you can also withdraw to give yourself movement, and then you just move away. Right? Great combo there. And also, the reason Zentarum Tactics is up on the screen is because Zentarum Tactics, its retaliate function specifically says you can make an opportunity attack against that creature. So it still counts as an opportunity attack, which triggers all of the features of Sentinel. So if you hit them with a Zentarum Tactics retaliate and you also have Sentinel, then their movement speed is also reduced to 0. So once you have Sentinel, it doesn't matter which way you provoke an opportunity attack. Anything that says an opportunity attack, you reduce their speed to 0. Very cool way to really lock down an enemy and ruin their turn. Tactic number 4. So this one is just using the obscure cunning strike option. All right, this is one that I said was maybe more expensive than it was worth. But somebody pointed out if you do it as a reaction on the creature's turn, this is another way to ruin their turn. Right, so however they're going to do it, whether it's walking away without disengaging, or Sentinel to provoke an opportunity attack, or Zentarum Tactics, right, to get an opportunity attack as a reaction during their turn. If you hit them on their turn, then you blind them. So presumably this would be if they have multi-attack, right? They attacked your ally and hit them, so that triggers Sentinel. Or they attacked you and hit you, that triggers Retaliate. Either way, you can now blind them, and if they have any more attacks that turn, they're now blinded until the end of its next turn. So they're going to make all the rest of the attacks this turn as blinded, which gives them disadvantage on the attack rolls. It also means you can just walk away. As long as they're blinded, you can walk away if they can't see you without provoking opportunity attacks, and it lasts until the end of their next turn. So they're going to make all of their attacks next turn with disadvantage as well. This is a great control option to help as a great defense as a reaction during their turn to really minimize what the damage an enemy can do to you or your party. Pretty good option. Tactic number 5, alert. And you might be saying, well, of course, like rogues always want to go fast and go higher in the initiative order. That's not really a new tactic. Right. But I think a lot of people forget about the swap part, right? Because one of the things you need, if you can't get advantage on your attack roll so that you can land your sneak attack, the other thing you need is an ally within 5 feet. Now, if you go first, it's round number 1, you probably don't have an ally in 5 feet because you're going first. None of your allies have taken their turn yet. None of them have run up. So you may want to swap with one of the frontliners who does want to run up, let them go first. They'll run up to melee, and then you now have an ally in melee to trigger your sneak attacks. Don't sleep on that one. Number 6. So this is another reaction one, and I actually mentioned it earlier, which is if they attack you on their turn, you get a reaction attack against them. Well, they don't necessarily have to attack you with Sentinel or Zentarum Tactics. They would have to make some sort of attack on their turn. But if they provoke an opportunity attack anyway, or you somehow get a reaction attack through any means, right? That still allows you to make an attack roll. You might and you might want to use withdraw as one of those options, because if they've used all of their movement to get up to you, provoked an opportunity attack somehow, you can now hit them, cunning, sneak attack, cunning strike, use withdraw, and then you get to walk away up to half your movement speed without provoking an opportunity attack. And if they don't have any more movement speed left, they can't even attack you again. It doesn't matter how many attacks they have left; they can't reach you. So you can just dance around and get out of there, right? If you've got a good, frontliner set of frontliners, you could and you happen to be, you ended your turn on the front line on purpose because you have Zentarum tactics or you have Sentinel and you're really trying to get your reaction attack. Well, once you land your reaction attack, include withdraw as part of that attack. So you can also just now, because you no longer want to be in, there's absolutely no reason for a rogue to be in melee after you've triggered your reaction sneak attack, right? So use withdraw on that reaction sneak attack to get out of there, run away from the front line, and keep yourself safe. Number 7, we talk a lot about how giving yourself ways to run in, run out. Most of them cost action economy. You're either going to do a cunning action disengage, or you're going to spend, if you hit with a sneak attack, you're going to spend 1d6 to do a cunning strike with withdraw, as I just talked about, to get out of there. Well, you can use a whip. Yes, it's the lowest damage die. It's a 1d4, but most of your finesse weapons are 1d6, right? So you're talking about dropping the average damage by 1 point to use this, right? And this allows you to just run up within 10 feet because it's the only finesse weapon that has reach, and also it has slow, which is a nice side benefit. But let's talk about reach first. So it's finesse, so it qualifies for sneak attacks. It has reach, so you don't have to get adjacent to them. You can go and attack them from 10 feet away, and without any additional action economy or spending any of your sneak attack dice, just move away. And spending 1d6 from your sneak attack dice for withdraw is 3.5 damage loss on average. Switching from a scimitar or short sword to a whip is 1 point of damage loss on average. So you come out ahead by using the whip. Now, some monsters have reach, and in those cases, you will need to use withdraw. So you might want to have a whip and some kind of rapier or a scimitar or a short sword on hand in those kind of scenarios, because you're going to need to run in, and you might as well get more damage out of your weapon because you're going to have to use withdraw to get away. But whip is a great alternative, saves action economy. You'll do more damage overall. And then it has the slow weapon mastery, as I mentioned earlier, which allows you to slow them, right? So if they decide to chase you, because you've run in, you run out, and now they're going to try to chase you, you've reduced their movement speed by 10. They're going to have a harder time chasing you. Tactic number 8, another oldie but goodie. So you're going to use one of these blade cantrips because you're the only martial class that only has one attack, right? And these blade cantrips, the reason the other martials don't use them is because it limits you to a single attack when you have extra attack, right? But rogues never get extra attack. So it's not nearly as limiting. Now, with the 2024 rules and weapon masteries, you could do, and rogues often do, a combination of Vex, one Vex weapon and one Nick weapon, so they get 2 attacks on their turn. But this is still a decent alternative to that if you don't want to be a 2-weapon fighting rogue. If you're only going to make 1 attack, this is the same number of attacks, and it adds extra damage plus extra effects on top of it, right? Booming Blade, this is another great way to disincentivize them to try to chase you, or who cares? Maybe you want them to chase you, because if they chase you, then Booming Blade is going to trigger and deal extra damage. So you run in, hit them with Booming Blade, deal a sneak attack, use whatever method you're going to use to withdraw, right, to get out of there, whether you're going to use cunning action to disengage, or you're going to use a sneak attack cunning strike option to use the withdraw, and then you back up and get away and end your turn far away from them. Now they're stuck with, do I try to chase you, or do I just attack somebody on your front line if they're near? Either way, you kind of win, right? Because if they chase you, they're going to take more damage from Booming Blade, and it's more damage than the initial damage from Booming Blade. Or they just attack one of your frontliners who is more built to take those hits. I mean, either way, you win. Green Flame Blade, nice. This is great for those times when there are a lot of minions, right, kind of in the fight. So you're going to run in, you're going to hit one of the beefier targets with your actual attack, land a sneak attack on them. Green Flame Blade is then going to cause extra damage to a secondary target, maybe kill one of the minions. So it's a great way to give yourself more, a little bit of area effect damage. Great option. And last but not least, number 9, True Strike. So True Strike was terrible in the 2014 rules. They've updated it in 2024, and now it's one of the most popular cantrips in the game. So went from worst to one of the best. This one is very much like the Blade cantrip, except that it works with any weapon, ranged weapons, thrown weapons, melee weapons. and there's no limit on the range. Like if you look at Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, they have a limit of 5 feet. So it doesn't even matter if your weapon has reach. They only work on a creature within 5 feet. This one has no such limitation. It also uses your spellcasting ability modifier. Now, that's not an option. You are required to use your spellcasting ability modifier. So if you're going for a dexterity first rogue, you may not want to have True Strike. You may want to stick with Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade because those use your dexterity or whatever ability score you're using to make the attack roll. So it could be strength, but it will use strength or dexterity, just like your weapon allows. True Strike is going to use your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, whatever you selected when you got True Strike, or from whatever feature gave you the ability to get True Strike. And you may want to do that, and for some builds you may not want to do that. If you're going for a mental stat first build, like Arcane Trickster may want to do that because they need high intelligence for their spellcasting. The Scion Rogue may want to be an intelligence first rogue because they get their number of bloodthirst count based on their intelligence score, and they have other features based on their intelligence score. So they may want to go intelligence score first. You may want to be a True Strike rogue if you're going to go Scion of the 3. I would still get a 16 in dexterity, right? Make dexterity your second stat. In both of those cases, I've talked about the reasons why in those videos, so I'm not going to go into it again here. But yeah, but if you want to be a ranged rogue and you're wanting to leverage a cantrip, this is the cantrip, right? This is the only cantrip that works for you. This also works with whip. So Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade don't work with whip because or they don't work with the whip's reach property. This one does. It works with the whip's reach property. The nice thing about adding a cantrip's damage to your rogue attacks is that rogues are a little bit behind the other marshals if they're only landing one sneak attack per round. And this kind of makes up the difference, right? It gives you another die of damage at levels 5, 11, and 17, kind of edging you back up to being in the same range as the other marshals. And if you can get more sneak attacks per round, that puts you further ahead. As a ranged rogue, it's really hard to get additional sneak attacks unless you have some access to the haste spell. That's the primary way to do it for a ranged rogue. And a ranged rogue, you don't have to worry about making multiple attacks because there are no ranged weapons with a nick property. So you're stuck with only one attack as a rogue anyway. True Strike might as well be your one attack. You're going to add a little bit more damage to it. It gives you an alternate damage type, so you can do Radiant or the base weapon damage type. Sometimes Radiant will be better, so just having the option is good. And it is an option for the base damage. Now, the additional damage is not, there is no option. The additional D6s of damage will always be Radiant damage, but Radiant is rarely resisted, so it's not a bad damage type to have. And there are like 20-something creatures in the game right now, 25-ish, I think, that there's an additional effect on them if you hit them with radiant damage. Like vampires, you turn off their regeneration if you hit them with radiant damage, right? So there's about 20. Actually, I was including sunlight, so it's probably less than 20 have an additional effect if you hit them with radiant damage. But this is a good option. Yeah, there you go. 9 tactics for improving your rogue. Thanks for watching. Remember to be cool when you play D&D because it's a game and this is for fun. That's its only point. And these people are your friends, or they could become your friends. Catch you next time.